We've got a big ACLJ victory. It's up at aclj.org. You'll see the updated blog there. It's a good outcome in the worship ban lawsuit. Ed White, a senior counsel with the ACLJ, joining us now. And Ed, just to walk people through, this was California's ban on singing in church during the COVID restrictions. And by the way, for those of you who think, well, we're totally out of the woods on COVID restrictions and mask mandates and these kind of bans, again, I will let you know. Remember, with the Delta 8 variant, there's people all over the place. It may not be in your state, but certainly in places like California where they've already put out a recommendation in LA County to go back to mask indoors. So this is, again, it's important to have these victories while we live through this unique time in world history. But Ed, tell people, walk people through the case and how it was resolved.
Sure. Roughly a year ago, California instituted this ban that prevented singing and chanting during worship services. Now, at the same time California did this, you were able to sing and chant in indoor protests, outdoor protests, Hollywood, music industry, just churches were focused on. California was the only state to ban singing and in churches. The case proceeded. We filed a lawsuit soon after the ban went into effect. Litigation ensued in other jurisdictions within California. And over time, California, I think it has something to do with Gavin Newsom up for his recall, started to change its position and started allowing more and more singing in certain circumstances in churches. Now, what was outrageous about this is rather than taking churches and looking at them individually, the size of the church, how many people are singing, there was just an outright ban. No matter what the science said. Sure.
I think if I got this right, wasn't the ban that no matter what the size of the worship center was, you could have no more than 25 people if your worship center even had, or maybe it was 100 people, whatever it was, even if your worship center had room for 1,000.
Correct. And that's what's so ridiculous about it. You would have 100 people in a church that could seat 1,000 people, and these people can be yards and yards apart from each other. You're not allowed to sing. You weren't allowed to have a cantor. You weren't allowed to have one person sing. It was specifically targeted against religious services. Now, at the same time, you were having protests, the Black Lives Matter protests throughout California, indoors. Masks were not required. They was being encouraged by Gavin Newsom and other politicians of California. Yeah. Even though the quote-unquote science said you shouldn't do that.
You know what's so interesting?
Over time,
what's so interesting here is that, and I think this is important for everybody to understand, and this ultimately took action all the way to the Supreme Court of the United States, which we'll get to in a moment. But what's important here is the singing and chanting, and that's in the Jewish faith, that is in Christian denomination, of course, singing, that is in, just about every faith. Andy, you're a chanter. And you're in the Orthodox Church.
I am. And
so this is an integral part of worship.
It is, liturgically. And it starts with the Jewish high priests in the Old Testament, which was picked up liturgically in the early church. And is still prevalent in the high masses conducted in the Roman Catholic Church and in all the liturgical sacraments of the Orthodox Church, where chanting and singing and intoning is just an integral part of the liturgy. So what they're trying to do is to essentially, or what California was attempting to do, was to suppress the very fundamental thing, the injunction in the Bible to raise a joyful noise unto the Lord.
This, again, I think it's a major victory. And Ed, you were talking about the politics of this as well.
Yep.
This is, again, to me, very important to point out, because some of this, we saw California, as the recall started getting more serious. Now there's a date for the recall vote, September 14th in California. So, Ed, so we have seen this shift by Newsom. How much of that do you think played into that? How much do you think politics played into these decisions at California? Because we have seen LA County now come out with a recommended a remasking because of the new variant, and so I just think, again, with all that together, is this settled and done, or is it something we have to continue to fight?
They had Supreme Court decisions. They were very slow to respond to those. And then you had the politics of it. And then they set a date of September 14th for the recall, which has got Gavin Newsom nervous. So what happens? They open things up. But like you just said, Jordan, politically, they've got a problem because their own health officials are now saying mask up.
That's right. And so they haven't done a mandate yet in L.A. County. There's no mandate yet in L.A. County. But Ed, what I was asking you is because of the shifting politics of the mandates and what you can do inside and outside, while it looked like we were in the clear, then over the last week, it looks like places like L.A. County have already put out recommendations to remask inside because of the new variant, the Delta variant. And so when we go back to that, Ed, is this something we have to continue to fight and continue to watch because we're not yet out of the woods on this yet, 100%?
Yes, we have to keep watch on this in California and other places. I mean, California had no scientific basis for this ban. Even the CDC, the World Health Organization, none of them said you should not sing in church. And in places around the country, especially the more liberal cities, mask mandates are still in place. I live in a very liberal city, and you walk into a supermarket here, I may be the only person without a mask. Everyone's masked up, even though the quote-unquote science says you don't need to wear a mask. So I see with this new variant coming out, we may be dealing with this situation again, especially in California.
Ed, when the Supreme Court issued its rulings, what was California's reaction?
California's reaction at first was, I think, shock.
Right.
And then they slowly started to allow more and more freedom for religion. They allowed more capacity for people. Yep. The last thing they seemed to have allowed was the singing. They would allow one person to sing, things like that.
Yeah, there was
and
no evidence that any of that was justifiable. Having said that, let me go to Harry on this. They're going to use this, and I'll get Dan's comment too. They're going to use this as a political wedge, like they're using the Voting Rights Act case, like they're going to use every case that the Supreme Court comes up with that they don't like and say, pack the court, change the number.
Absolutely. So I think the Democrats are fundamentally committed to one thing and one thing only at the end of the day, and that is authoritarianism. And in essence, they're claiming that only left-wing elites should rule, and that underscores the policy mistakes that Governor Newsom has made in California. Imagine telling a church with a 5,000-seat capacity, you can only have, let's say, 50 individuals in the church, and you cannot sing. There's no science. There's no reasonable, rational basis for issuing those types of rules and regulations.
Yep. Fan, they're going to use this, though, to try to get this filibuster taken away and to basically, whether they'll come out with court packing or not, they've got that commission going on right now.
No question about it. It's already started, Jay. And look, I mean, our argument from the beginning has been consistent that the Constitution means that churches should be the last to have restrictions placed on them and the first to have them reversed. That, of course, was so often the exact opposite in California. I would say this, though, Jay. You asked about the political dynamics. The only reason that California has a political problem on this is because groups like ours and people in California and churches in California stood up and pushed back. So, Jay, I think this is really a perfect example of when the government goes too far, it can actually roll back on them politically and become a problem. But in order to do that, the people have to stand up and they have to insist on our rights. That's the very reason we engage this lawsuit.
Hey, Ed, we appreciate all your hard work and your team's hard work on this case for us. Great result. Thank you so much for being with us. And again, a great decision.